Hey guys, it's your favorite gambling alter ego here. And the Swiss stages are finally over. We had a lot of exciting matches, and I can say that's been one of my favorite tournaments to watch so far. And we also got the draws for the playoff stage, and a lot of people do not like them, mainly because it's a regional rematch. It's like there's a lot of positives from this initial draw that I will get into later in the video, as well as today's games, and my predictions for how the playoff stage will turn out. The first reason why I enjoyed this initial regional rematch is because it guarantees the next matches in the upper and lower brackets are going to be Americas versus Pacific. So we'll know for a fact that it's going to be the best Americas team at this tournament versus the best Pacific team at this tournament, as well as the second best Pacific team versus the second best Americas team in the lowest bracket. And it only makes sense that both Pacific and Americas are in this bracket because at the end of the day, last year, I think you could say they were the best leagues in VCT. Shoot, even in the group of death, you had two EMEA teams that were at one point seen as number 2 and number 3 in their region, as well as Loud, which a lot of people wrote off, and DRX. And it was the Pacific and Americas teams that came out of that group of death. So if you look at history, we shouldn't really be that surprised that it's only Pacific and Americas here. And I guess one of the reasons why people don't like these rematches is because it's going to be the same teams, right? Well, I'm not too sure about that. It's like these teams aren't the same teams that were playing in kickoff tournaments. For example, Gen.G are now running Yoru on Breeze. That's crazy. They weren't doing that in kickoff tournaments. And they look a lot better, right? They shaked up their split comp as well. And if they're able to perform the same way they did against EDG, that's scary. That's scary for everybody watching. And then you have Sentinels who are looking better and better after each game they play. They're like freaking Saiyans. After every battle that they fight in, they have time to recuperate and get even stronger. That's a terrifying thought as well. And then we have Loud, who also tried Yoru on Ascent, which wasn't too hot in my opinion. I think they're kind of jumping the gun. They should have never put QCK on Yoru. You shouldn't really put that kind of pressure on anybody. You just pick up Yoru when they haven't really had like months or weeks to perfect the agent, because Yoru takes a lot of time to get used to. Loud wasn't banning Breeze because they were bad at it. They were banning it as their trump card because they're kind of nasty. They beat Gen.G on Breeze. The same Gen.G in their following match kind of like destroyed EDG on. So Loud is pretty good on Breeze. And you know who isn't so good on Breeze? Yeah, Sentinels. And I'm pretty sure in this next matchup, Loud is going to ban Split, right? One of the common things I've seen with a lot of people complaining, why aren't teams banning Split? I think a part of that is because first, certain teams like Karmine Corp, they were pretty confident in their Split, and you can't blame them. They beat Fnatic, a world-class team, on Split. So they're probably thinking, hey, if we could beat Fnatic, we can probably slay another king in their preferred map pick, you know? So I don't really blame Karmine Corp for picking Split, but now if they pick Split again in the future, they're just trolling. Like, I think any team that picks Split against Sentinels, they're just trolling, right? You should just instantly ban Split when you play Sentinels if you want to win the series. A lot of the international teams did not believe in Evil Genius's Fracture in Masters Tokyo. So the whole league had to learn the hard way that you don't mess with Evil Geniuses on Fracture. And I think people are going to start to realize that you don't mess with Sentinels on Split. And we haven't even gone into Paper X either, who started running Forsaken on Raze during their last Split game. And that joint looked immaculate. I already explained these stats in my previous video that you guys can check out when they were playing against Team Heretics. It was an absolute movie. And Munya is starting to gel a little bit better with the team. Like, Heretics may have woke up a monster in Paper X. It kind of reminds me of that whole saying, like, iron sharpens iron. The better the teams you play, the better you get. So Paper X facing Team Heretics may have been a blessing in disguise, right? So just because we've already seen these teams play together doesn't mean we already know what the outcomes will be. Because at the end of the day, during kickoffs, Paper X beat Gen.G before, and Gen.G beat Paper X too. So for all we know, the series is tied 1-1. The exact same thing happened with Sentinels and Loud, where Loud beat Sentinels first, and then Sentinels beat Loud in the grand finals. And that grand finals, it wasn't a one-sided affair. It went 5 maps, and one of those maps didn't include Breeze. And like I said before, if Loud is smart, they will ban Split. So in this rematch, it doesn't mean it's going to be guaranteed that Sentinels win against Loud. And with the rest that the teams are having and time to prepare, we get to see them possibly at their best too, where they have enough time to like maybe draw up game plans against each other. But let's get into the games that led us here. And I guess we have to talk about the elephant in the room, which is Edward Gaming versus the Loud. This game was rough. During my break, I was in like a couple of streamers chat. A lot of them were saying the same things, where they said that these teams did not understand the game at a pro level. And there were moments where Sadak was just like mid-round calling the mess out of Edward Gaming. You could just see it. And then rewatching this, like I was paying close attention to the number of players that were left. You'll notice like it wasn't like a flawless run every single round, and the Loud players just won them. They just won all the clutches, you know? Like round 4, it was a 1v1 and Loud just clutches it up. Round 5 was a 2v2 at one point, and then it became a 1v2. It was still winnable, but EDG just couldn't pull it off. Round 6 was also another 1v1. Round 7 ended in a 1v2. Round 8 ended in a 1v1, right? I know one of those rounds was more like a 1v3, but the fact that the EDG player was able to take out 2 people just tells you that the problem with China is not aim whatsoever. It's just mid-round calling, and I guess adjustments and utility usages, stuff like that. Like at least for Edward Gaming, that's their issue, which kind of just sucks, because like ever since I became a fan of them in Masters Tokyo, I was like, oh, they can do something here. They're different than the other teams, you know? But until like they kind of get their game IQ and game sense up at the pro level, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to watch and be a believer that they can make it far in tournaments. Shoot, even if we look at Sunset too, they kept going to the A site, and I'm sure that they watched the VODs. Loud's retake on A site is scary good. Like they have so much utility, and I know a lot of people talk about the flashes, and the flashes are good, but they have a lot of abilities just to create space. And it's just like a thing of beauty if you're just like either rooting for Loud or you're just like rooting for good Valorant. Like if I'm playing Loud on A site, I think the best thing that you can do is try to make them burn their utility before planting, or you just push them, right? You got to do something else, right? Like if you just plant on A without them using any of their abilities, it's a wrap, bro. It's an uphill battle. And then we have like Paper X versus Karmine Corp. That was a little bit closer, but Karmine Corp is going for like a lot of these comps that are like one-sided. Like they're full-on offensive comps, right? And we saw that they can get it going, bro. If you give them a little bit of space, a little bit of light, and it's on the offensive end, they will run with it. They actually did make the comeback a reality. They just weren't able to close it out. And as always, it's fun just to watch Paper X. They're just a bunch of goofballs. I stay laughing at some of the things that happens, like this whole like the Vi. Like this is something that you see in ranked games when you're solo queuing, not in a professional game. The fact that Reina is just staring there like what's going on. It was just so funny. Like you can tell this man has been scarred by so many enemy Reinas that when he finally has like a good Reina on his team, he just doesn't believe it. Rank has really scarred this man's soul for him to be shooting any Reina on site, even though this Reina is literally like a couple of seats away from him. But if we go to Lotus, it was night and day. Like everyone talks about how good Sentinels are on Sunset and Split. People need to start realizing how good Karmine Corp is on Lotus, and specifically A site with Narrate. If it's a 1v5 and he plants on A, it's winnable. That's what I'm saying basically. If it's just his bread and butter, right? And then as a whole, Karmine Corp kind of played better as a team in my opinion, right? At least when it comes to swinging angles together, because like in Ascent, I'm not gonna lie, there was a couple of times where Paper X were just swinging one by one. They weren't going as a unit, where I don't see every team do, which is like they have someone to like mess with your crosshair, right? Whether if it's someone just like jumping like a madman or just wide swinging something before another person follows through. They're really good at that basically, just swinging as a team and getting whoever's holding that angle to like mess up, right? Because you know if you miss your first shot, chances are it's going to be a 1v2 and you're not going to win that 1v2. That's something that I think Paper X should work on, is like swinging angles together as a team. There's been a handful of times that I've seen where they just walk into someone's crosshair one by one. Lotus was still filled with a lot of amazing highlights from the likes of Shin, and I already mentioned Narrate, how good he was, making all these NA teams upset that they didn't take him. And they even pulled in some kind of trickery too. Like I believe it was on round 17, they invested a whole fade ult as well as some stray gunshots just to make Paper X bite on this site while they actually planted on the other side of Lotus. And they made sure that they did it together as a team. Like it wasn't just Narrate by himself, there was someone with him. Ascent was kind of like a movie too, where they were running triple initiator, which I comp, and it was kind of impressive how they were pretty good on the defensive end with triple initiator, no sentinel. Yeah, that's another thing too, like both teams were not running sentinels at all, which just makes me wonder if like the sentinel class as a whole is slowly getting like forgotten. Of course, you're going to need Sentinels for larger maps like Lotus and Breeze, but for smaller ones, it seems like teams feel confident enough where they can win maps without them. So that's going to be another thing that I just keep an eye out on. And even though EMEA got eliminated early just with China, their matchups were a lot more impressive, right? Their round differentials are a lot closer than China's round differentials. And that just kind of tells you that they were in these games. Like if one round went a different way, it could be both EMEA teams in the playoffs, which is quite impressive because for the majority of them on their orgs, it was their first international tournament. All right, so now we have my pick'ems. Let's start off with Loud versus Sentinel. We've seen these two teams play already in kickoff, but like I said earlier, they're not the same two teams. I know we've already seen a team destroy them on Ascent, but Loud beat Sentinels in a very close match. But you have to remember, in that initial match between Loud and Sentinels, it required Saucy to have a life game. Saucy went absolutely nuclear on that map for it to even be close. Can he do it again? I'm not too sure. Maybe. I'm not going to doubt a world champion, especially if that world champion's a Brazilian. So as long as a Loud bans Split, for the love of God, Loud, you have to ban Split for this to work. If Loud bans Split, then I can see them beating Sentinels in this initial matchup. Right, and now we have Gen.G versus Paper X. Man, I'm really thinking this is hard. I don't know. I really don't know. And because I don't know, I'm gonna go with what storyline excites me the most, because I really don't know who's gonna win. So I think I would prefer to watch Paper X play Sentinels and Gen.G play Loud again. I think that's what I would like to see, mainly because Paper X has a pretty good Sunset comp and Sentinels are pretty good on Sunset too. So I want to see how they kind of like battle it out on Sunset. I think Sentinels are still better than Paper X on Split. So as long as Paper X bans Split, I think we'll be chilling there. But I'm gonna go with Sentinels winning it. Now, some of you might be saying, Kaizen, don't you root for Paper X to win? And to that answer, I do. But one thing you guys have to realize is that I am Mr. 50%. I have been only getting 50% of my picks right. And it's usually the games that I really want to happen, they lose. And the games I don't really care about, they win. So I'm gonna try to do like a reverse jinx, if that makes any sense. Maybe I do triple jinx myself. Oh, who knows, who knows. But now we have Gen.G versus Loud, where Gen.G already beat Loud before, but they were doing some funky stuff on Ascent. Like I said this before, I'll say it again, putting QCK on Yoru when he obviously has not put in enough time to make Yoru good was just them trolling, right? That was a big troll on Loud's part. I think they're going to stick with Phoenix on Ascent. But if I pick Gen.G, that means Sentinels play Loud again. Because there's going to be multiple rematches, yeah. Like any way that you cut and dice it, there's going to be multiple rematches. The question is like what rematch you want. And that's just what happens when you have double elimination with 4 teams. There will be rematches now that I think about it. And if there's going to be any rematch I want to see, it's probably going to be Loud and Sentinels. So we'll have Gen.G in the finals, in the grand final. And I think in a 5-map series, I think Sentinels take the cake in the 5-man series. And through a lower bracket run, Sentinels will declare to the world they're back, baby.